In recent years, many people have come to view the church in a new way, in a way that no one expected and that no one is proud of. The cause? Child sexual abuse.
I guess it would be the reaction of most people, completely surprised, pretty disgusted, and let down. It should be something that is taken to court and criminal action taken against these people just like anybody else.
I think ministers should be held accountable for their actions, and judgments and punishments should be handed out accordingly.
That's not good. It's not good. You know, because it is a lot of things going on in the church that no one knows until after it's happened, you know, after so long. You know, it's been happening so long.
It definitely raises questions over if the right things are in place to take care of the issues. I think that they should hold them accountable like they would hold anyone else accountable.
I think it's terrible. I just, yeah, it's a betrayal of trust, and that's it's a pretty big issue with me.
It's very disheartening. Right now I don't go to church, so it makes me wonder, you know, even if I can bring up a child in a church, you know, even if I would want to go to church and let that child go and do things at the church unsupervised. You think that you can trust people at the church the most, and you really, through these cases, I see that you can't.
Church leaders who fail to establish safeguards for the care of children lead to this breakdown of trust.
We've seen a clear shift in our society. Churches used to get the benefit of the doubt, but that is no longer true.
Richard Hammer is an attorney and CPA specializing in church law. He has conducted extensive research on the problem of child sexual abuse and the church.
Community standards have changed. Churches, just like any other organization that works with children, whether it's the Boy Scouts, the YMCA, or your local school district, are being held to a higher standard of care than in the past. A failure to take those standards seriously could result in significant legal problems if an incident of child sexual abuse should occur.
One of the things that I think historically has been an issue with churches is the reluctance to be very blunt about it, and to, I think when things involve sexual abuse, sexual subjects, people tend to want to avoid it, and the more blunt, the more honest you can be about it, and the more upfront and open, then the better off you are.
Dr. James Cobble has been working with church leaders for over 15 years to reduce the risk of child sexual abuse.
There are some excellent prevention programs in churches today, far more than what I think most people realize. And the leaders in those churches really should be commended. But there are still too many church leaders who just don't get it. And they'll say things like, we know everybody in our congregation, or no one would do anything like that, or we don't have the time or the resources to put together a prevention program. I think most people would agree that no church, no organization really, can totally prevent the problem of child sexual abuse. But if you don't make a reasonable attempt and a problem should occur, you're going to be held accountable. And none of those excuses are going to be acceptable. And in the end, really, who is it that's hurt? It's your children and your congregation.
I'm sure you will agree with me that the reputation of your church and ministry is at stake. You know, it takes a good many years to build a reputation of strength, integrity, and honor in your community, but only a moment to tear it down.
Why are churches potentially more vulnerable to this problem than some other organizations? Dr. William Tyson specializes in the treatment of criminals who have been prosecuted for child sexual abuse.
Churches are often a very open and trusting environment, but the fact is, it's very clear from the history of the last 10 years that schools and churches also attract a small group, a small but significant group of people who are there for the wrong reasons, and that includes predatory pedophiles or people who have other needs being met through contact with children or through inappropriate sexual contact or predatory sexual behavior in general. So it's a reality that we have to accept.
One of the steps in reducing the risk is to remove the misconceptions we have about child molesters.
I have met a number of child molesters over the years, and what I am struck by is what really nice people they seem to be. That, we have this idea of child molesters lurking in alleys with the raincoats and, hey kid, come over here type of thing, and I think that parents assume that it's somebody like that, but in fact that is more rare. It's really somebody who has developed a trusting relationship with a child who might cross that boundary. So it's really could be anybody.
People involved in law enforcement, such as Detective Karen Balmas and Parole Officer Rick Fields, understand the breadth and scope of people who molest children in churches.
We've had pastors, teachers, youth group directors, Boy Scout leaders, Sunday school teachers, and janitors from one end to the other. Basically anybody who's involved there, anybody who ever has access to the kids.
And then just your common, or not common, but your regular church-going member. We've had plenty of those.
Sexual abuse can happen in any church, including yours. Dave was molested by his pastor when he was 11 years old.
Over a period of a couple months, I said there had been these incidents of inappropriate touch, which I didn't recognize as a prepubescent 11-year-old. But I knew I was uncomfortable with it. And he took me to, at the house where he lived, took me to a back room, which was also set up as an office, and closed and locked the door. And I'll never forget the day that I went to church, and I was told that he was no longer there, that he had been transferred. And I can never forget how glad I was that day.
Abuse victims often find it difficult to tell anyone and often remain silent for years.
They may be embarrassed to come forward. They may have been coerced not to say anything by the perpetrator. They may have come to believe in some way that it's their doing. They may feel ashamed to talk about it. There could be any host of reasons why they decide not to speak up.
At this point, I know of at least 9 victims, most of those which came after me. And to think of how many kids were harmed because I wasn't able to come forward just gave me an immense sense of regret and wishing it had never happened. But I also know that I've been forgiven. I know that God has forgiven me, and I also know that the other victims will forgive me, because if anybody understands how difficult it is to tell, I know it's other victims.
The children in your church, your children, deserve a safe place.
I guess the thing that I would want to point out to everyone is that the protection policies that are in place in churches today, if those had been in place in 1968, I never would have been abused. If after the first time that the church became aware that he had abused children, if he had been removed, I never would have been abused. So people need to know that these policies are not meant to make adults uncomfortable or to make them embarrassed or to feel like they're a suspect in something. These policies are a blessing, and they're meant to protect children. And I think everyone needs to embrace them for exactly what they are.